Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on 3 things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show.
So there's 2 reps that I had at Power Reviews. I had a guy named Alex, a guy named Casey. Alex, if you just covered up all of these, this guy was the freaking king of finding opportunities and qualifying them. Like he was just a master of, like, he always had this massive pipeline. Casey didn't, right? So Casey's was like a third of what Alex's was all the time. So from an outside perspective, if I'm looking at that, I'm like, what the hell's wrong with Casey?
Right.
Here's the if you look at the results on the back end. So the results, Casey consistently crushed Alex, crushed him in terms of bookings and quota attainment and all of that. So if you just look in this one silo and go, hey, Alex is so much better than Casey, what's wrong with Casey? You'd be missing the whole boat. And so like that's where this all started. Is we've got to stop looking at like how much can I pile into each silo, and start to take a look back and go, all right, why is Casey doing so well? Well, he's got a third as many of these, but each one is better, is a higher dollar amount.
Yeah.
He tends to win more because he's really, really focused and he's building relationships. He's doing this slowly. And as a result, he's ending up with buyers that buy faster. And so when you look at all those, while this one was down, these 3 were way up and cycle length was quick. That's why he was crushing it. And so we had to look at, all right, what's Casey doing? And Casey just took a human approach. He just was able to relate so well with the customer. He connect on LinkedIn, he wouldn't immediately pitch slap them, right? He would, maybe interact with content a little bit, or he would take what he's finding on that and then send something that is like highly customized, personalized, valuable. He would just teach, and he would just keep contributing to that on a very small number of opportunities. And the next thing you know, those would turn into big dollar amounts, and he would win almost every deal that he was in.
All right. So you can steal this if you want. So I'm going to say yes, amen, hallelujah, because a bloated pipeline is pointless, right?
Right.
I always tell people, if you have a bloated pipeline, what that means is you have a professional visitor, right? Somebody that shows up is getting invited to birthday parties, but they're never going to close a deal, right? Yep. So there's that delicate balance. So do you remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that pool scene?
Yeah.
All right. So this is like the best analogy in the world to me, I think. So if you look at this, and so here's the filter, right? That little filtery thing on it. And then you have a trash can over here, right? So let's go the Oscar the Grouch trash can. So whenever you're looking at this, the way I view this lead flow is it goes, we dump it into this pool, and that pool then gets pulled into this hot tub where there's a lot of movement. And then from that hot tub, it's either going to go into the trash can because they're disqualified, right? Or it's going to go into the filter to come back in, or maybe it will go right back into here. Maybe it fell out of pipeline or whatever. So I had to push it out, close loss, because they went MIA. I want to close loss that. But then, hey, they're back, and I don't want to start from scratch, so I'm going to put them back into the hot tub. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
In the old days, what I was looking at is total attempts. So I'm looking at a little bit higher than you're starting at the number of deals. So I look at attempts.
Yeah.
I look at connects.
Yep.
And then I look from connects to MQL, or a booked meeting.
Right.
SQL is kept meeting. And then pipeline would go here.
Right.
And then, whatever, however many steps that is to include legal and blah, blah, blah. There's a couple of different steps, and then closed won or closed lost.
Yep. That's exactly what I used to do too. Yep. That's right.
Now, what I'm finding though is that although, yes, that works, there seems to be right here, this is not quite hot tub. It's like a new nurture that if you constantly bring value to them and you start to build this up to say 250 to 500 or 500 contacts that we're bringing value to, and almost doing like a strategic account management that you would for a customer, do that strategic account management or nurturing, targeted nurture campaign for those 250 to 500. And that's where you start to get that, maybe 10% of those will fall out a year or something like that. That's kind of what my new way of thinking is becoming. So let me just stop there and say, does that kind of align where we have, yes, quantity to test out the leads, validate the information, are they even in our target profile, really make sure that we have that right. And then those validated, those are worth the more in-depth work of relationship building and nurturing and all that stuff. So that's kind of what's been going through my mind. Is that way off from what you were talking about?
No, that's right on. I mean, as far as the measures, what we did was dials to completed calls to appointments.
Okay.
And then appointments to sales. Or no, I'm sorry, appointment to qualified, and then qualified to sales.
Yeah.
And like that was always the metrics that I used to teach and use. So like what you're talking about is right on. There's two things. Number one, like to your point about the inflated pipeline, it was, I don't know if you saw my rant from a few weeks ago on that, but this idea that I used to coach my team to be like, hey, we need 4x our quotas in pipeline at any time. Do you remember this?
I didn't see the rant, but I know where you're heading with it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, we always need 4x our quota in pipeline. And so what would everybody do? Go fill their pipeline. And then we would look at that as a proactive measure that, hey, we've got 4x our quota in there. That's awesome. We're going to make it. And I then realized how dumb that is. Because it's like, that just assumes that we're only going to close a quarter of our stuff. And so we're looking at the wrong measure. We're looking at the number of opportunities and how big those are, and that's it. Why don't we instead start to look at a hyper focus on qualification?
Yeah.
Something that I refer to as extreme firmographic focus, which is like, let's look at all this data as it relates to verticals, company sizes, even geos, and then go, let's pick a lane for a few weeks. Like 6 weeks, we're just going to pick one lane. And let's say that's large aerospace companies in the US. And we rally the whole marketing organization around it. Everybody is all hyper-focused on aerospace. The next thing you know, each one of those reps suddenly and magically becomes really, really smart on aerospace. Like everything they see, and they're doing research, they're following experts on Twitter. They know everything that's going on in the industry. And the next thing you know, with those aerospace companies, they're providing insights. They're coming across as consultants instead of salespeople. Their confidence is contagious. It's building. And as a result, like when we did this at one of my companies, and it was actually, my CEO thought it was freaking nuts. And because I was just like, I know we can call on all these manufacturers. I know, like, but for 6 weeks, just trust me. And if you want to fire me after that, like, if you can't feel safe about taking risks, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
I think this is a risk worth taking. We ended up we were a $3 million company at the time. We got a $7 million deal with Boeing.
Nice.
And then we got Gulfstream, we got Cessna, and then we slowly just went out. So I had a rep in Dallas who was like, I think oil and gas is a really perfect match here. Can we rally around that? Like, go. You got Schlumberger and Halliburton. Chicago guy. What about heavy manufacturing? We went after Caterpillar and Deere. I don't remember if we got those, but like that was the theory.
Yeah.
Hyper extreme firmographic focus in very tight windows of companies that we know work based on the data, based on our case studies. And the next thing you know, it's taking us a lot less opportunities to get to that. Like our ratio fell down to like 2-to-1 needed instead of 4-to-1.
So that was in your book, correct?
I don't remember. Maybe.
I can't remember if that was in your book, but I remember you bringing that up, and I can't recall if it was in the podcast or the book. But so let's put practicality to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's identify the vertical, then identify the critical few to get in there. And so is that a list of 5? Is that a list of 10? Because if you're talking Boeings and Gulfstream,
oh, right. Yeah.
Pretty darn niche.
Yes, exactly.
So,
it was for us at the time. So this was back in 2007. It was right at the beginning of the Great Recession.
Right.
And we had 12 reps. They fired the VP of sales and 8 of the reps. And they're like, Todd, you're in charge.
I have to be.
I was cheaper. And like, that was my first VP of sales gig.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's go. But you got to like, I'm cheap, but we got nothing to lose. Let's go. And so I had 4 reps. And so they each had like 5 or 6 companies that they were focused on for a very small or short period of time. We like, those deals, that Boeing deal took us a year to close, that it was 6 weeks of hyper focus to generate the knowledge, the confidence, and the pipeline around it. And then we would slowly go out.
Okay.
And like, so it was just hyper focused in short sprints and making sure that marketing, they're looking and finding everything and delivering case studies and the stuff that we needed in that vertical.
Interesting. Okay. So so that goes into the practicality of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're hyper focused on critical few number of targets. So it literally might be 10, 20, and 20 is probably going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're doing case studies, collateral, really learning the industry. So whenever we're talking to them, we're subject matter experts, or at least can hold our own in the lingo. So you're not talking about straight out of school, never had any kind of business acumen whatsoever. You're talking a little bit more seasoned.
In this one, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, like at Power Reviews, or like there's a startup that I advise here in Chicago. They could go after anybody that has a website selling anything.
Okay.
And so we first went at a high level and said, all right, like what's the sweet spot? Like, where do you want to be? And it was retailers between 50 million and $1 billion. I'm like, all right, that's really wide. Like, let's talk about the verticals within it. And we did. And then I was like, or where are you finding a lot of momentum? And they're like, apparel, health, and beauty. All right. So we're at apparel, health, and beauty. Pick one.
Yeah.
We just closed a couple of deals with apparel. I'm like, all right, tell me about it. And it was like, I don't know, it was like 2 shoe companies. And I was like, all right, shoes. Like shoes? I'm like, shoes. 6 weeks of fucking shoes, right? that was it. And he was just like, we got nothing to lose. Let's go.
Yeah.
And he did it. And like that company, Serena Williams just invested in them. Like all of a sudden they're like, all of a sudden the ball is rolling and then it's getting bigger. But it's just like, you got to start with a hyper focus. That, again, that's not the intuitive model. It's kind of my crazy mind, but I know that confidence is contagious. I know that focus builds confidence. I know that confidence, when you're talking to a customer and you're bringing insights, that's the homework. That's how you build relationships. That's why, like, that's how you stand out.
Yeah.
I'm just like such a huge believer that, especially in spaces where there's lots of companies that do kind of the same thing, you can differentiate on your products, maybe the value, maybe the price, and really differentiate in the way you sell.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing this.
That's interesting. So hyper focus, how about if you're net new and if you are the industry or the industry maker, same thing, I guess.
Yes.
And I would think that it would be a little bit more important there because now you have to prove yourself. And this goes to Crossing the Chasm, that book in the 90s where you get your beachhead and then expand out from there is kind of what you're talking about, right?
Well, yeah, it's like, one of my old books, like 2000 or 1916 book here. It might even actually be in that book. where it talks about like you wouldn't just go out into a field and start shooting like shotgun things and then like hope that maybe you got a bird.
Yeah.
And that you're not going to eat for long doing it that way. Like you got to study it and figure out where the birds are going to be. And, you know, like that's one of the analogies they talk about. And I'm like, that's exactly right. As an entrepreneur, as a, you know, new founder, you think like, hey, let's just cast a wide net and see what we get. Well, that's probably all right for a few weeks just to see who's interested and what kind of challenges you have. But you got to get to hyper focus right away. You got to make a bet and double down on it. And like that's that same company that I advised that we did shoes. I'll tell you, a year back, part of the reason that they got in so much trouble was for the same reason. And that's why they listened to me on the shoes thing. We did the first pass at this, and they were like, at the time they were thinking 50 million to $1 billion in revenue retailers.
Okay.
And and we talked about why is 50 and below bad. He laid it all out for me. All right, remember that. What about billion plus? Why is that bad? And like we vetted that whole thing out. 2 months later, he calls me and he's like, dude, you're not going to believe this. Nordstrom has been looking for a solution like us forever. They were about to invest in building it. They did a Google search and found us. And like, dude, like this is it. And I'm like, this is what? He's like, it's Nordstrom. If we get Nordstrom, we build credibility and off we go. And I just took him back. I was like, Ronnie, remember what we talked about? He's like, fuck off, Todd. Like, this is Nordstrom.
It's Nordstrom.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to go. And I was just like, all right, you know, think about what that win means. It, you know, means credibility, but it means credibility to companies like Nordstrom, which is great if you decide you're going to move your focus. But remember the downsides. Like Nordstrom isn't just going to buy your solution and put it in like they downloaded some software. They're going to beat you up. He's like, we're ready. Like, we're going to go. 6 months later, after they had 4 meetings in Seattle, and Nordstrom had basically forced them to reprioritize their whole roadmap.
Oh, no.
The holidays come, so it's like September, and Nordstrom's like, we love you. We still want to do this, but it's got to wait till January. We got the holidays. We just locked down.
Yeah.
Like, okay. January comes, Nordstrom reorgs, all those people are in different roles. Oh. And so they reordered their roadmap. They had spent a year focused on them, and they just lost, like their opportunity cost was gigantic. And then basically he called me with, you know, like basically the doctor had delivered the news that they had 6 months to live, but this time it was their investors.
Yeah.
And so we just scrambled to like hyper focus for a little while. Try that. Like, you know, focus on, you know, scaling down. What do you not need? Like, let's get a little bit more runway. And now they're on fire.
Nice. Okay. No, it's really, really helpful. So that said, how are you doing? Are you still believing in leading and lagging indicators? Like, how are you tracking and accountability? Because I can't see you as one that's, here's not what I'm hearing. You're relational, yes, but you're also transparent, and you wouldn't have gotten to where you are if you weren't also holding people accountable. Mm-hmm. So how are you getting that both and?
Yeah, I mean, it was looking at those 4 metrics, right? So we would, like, those are the 4 that I looked at holistically. So my sales ops guy, at the beginning of every month, beginning of every quarter, we would look at, all right, how do we do with, you know, deal creation, dollar size on those deals by vertical, win rates, cycle lengths by vertical, by like deal size.
Okay.
We would look at those, and then we'd measure them quarter over quarter and year over year. And I'd present that to the board as, like, in many cases, we would start to see number of deals go down, and the board would be like, what the heck? Like, we're getting really good at qualifying. We're getting really good at driving value into these deals. And we're getting really good at efficiently taking buyers through the journey. So the other 3 are all going up. And that's what I want. Like, I would rather us work on a lot less deals and have those other 3 indicators going up. And they're like, cool. And my leaders, my managers would do the same thing with their reps. They would look at all 4 categories. And then even during, after every month, my VP of sales with our corporate team would get everybody in a room, put everybody's numbers up on a spreadsheet with no names. So it was, you know, bookings, number of opportunities, win rate, average size, cycle length. And we just put that up. And then the other reps, they had a little piece of software they'd use that would elect who the rep of the month was.
Okay.
And it was like, so they would hold each other accountable to all four. So you'd see somebody who had a ton of new opportunities. That person rarely won, right? It was the people that were working deals efficiently and not wasting time.
What did you do? Because where I'm at, and this is where I'm likely screwing up here, what did you do about before the new deals, the activities to get the new deals? Were you tracking any of those leading indicators?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We built our CRM around a lot of times, I don't know if you remember that MSP, I don't remember what it's called, but there was somebody had posted like, hey, how do you do your Salesforce stages? And everybody's just like, first step is discovery, and then demo, and then proposal, and like, oh, like, God, like if you're focusing the way that you forecast on buyer or seller behaviors, you're just going to lose. Like that's, and so we rejiggered our entire forecast to focus on recognizing buyer behavior.
Okay.
And which is essentially, like you've seen a million times, and I wrote in the book, have they decided for change? Like, do they realize their status quo is no longer sustainable? And like, where are we in that? Have they decided on us versus somebody else? And where are they in that process? And then have they decided now is the right time? And where are we in the contract process and all that? We would do that. And then we would celebrate the reps when they lose, which is nuts, I know. But like, we had to create safe environments for reps to not only lose, but proclaim that they've lost.
Well,
and part of the reason was we would create, like in previous environments, reps would be afraid to lose. And if they did lose, or they were losing, or a deal got out of control, the last person they were calling was their manager. And that, like, I was like, we got to fix that.
Yeah. Well, that goes against, your transparency sale. That goes against it completely, because what we couch it in terms of disqualify the opportunity. Mm-hmm. If it's an NO, I want a KNOW as quickly as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I try to drive to the disqualification, there's no pressure there. I can be a lot more transparent and a trusted advisor with that person if I'm saying, hey, here's all the reasons that you might not. And if they still want to do it, hey, not my fault. I tried to talk you out of it. So yeah. I guess you got to buy it now, right? So let's talk through that. So I like that part. And also, if you're not getting your people or celebrating the no and that disqualification, because sometimes, especially more complex sales, that cost of the sales process is insanely high. So if we can get a disqualification early, that's going to be helpful there. That mindset that, we have to have a mutual disqualification. And lastly, it prevents that bloated pipeline where we're going to have more accurate forecasting. And now I can focus on who's really going to be good, as opposed to everybody, clogging up my time.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. We would have to sell it like that. I mean, that's part of the transparency piece, is like, I wanted every rep to have less opportunities in their pipeline, a much higher win rate. Okay. And the way you do that is by you're the Sherpa to the buyer, right? You're helping them get up the mountain without killing themselves. And whether it's with you or somebody else, like, let's figure that out as quickly as possible. That whole transparency piece. It's all about win faster, win a higher percentage of your deals, qualify in better, the deals you should win, qualify deals out faster that you're going to lose anyway.
Yeah.
And then in the end, make it really hard on your competitors to message against you, because you've already sold on behalf of them.
Yeah, 100%.
You controlled the narrative and the message.
Well, awesome. Okay, so the good news is that, it goes into less on net new deals to make sure that we have a thin, fast-flowing pipeline instead of opposed to one, like a clogged pipeline with algae and disgustingness heading through it, right?
Yeah, just so we can say that it's full.
Yeah, right. So we keep that thing flowing through. And so that's one piece. But in order to be able to do that, we also need to look at above that, more in that marketing, I'm calling it that smarketing phase, that cross between sales and marketing, where we're doing effective outreach, niching into a critical few so we can have hyper focus on that, make enough attempts, enough research, enough collateral to be able to do that. And then that's going to fill to the pipeline, better qualification. I can flow through there with better understanding, better value, because I'm really well rounded or well vetted, or I can't think of the word there. I want to say well rehearsed, but that's not the case. I can't think of the dang word, but you get it. We're really good in that language. So we're now having executive conversations, strategic conversations, as opposed to tactical. And so I'm not going to get pushed down to the level that I sound, which is procurement. I'm going to stay up at a strategy level, which is that senior executive kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny. And that brings up a good point about the alignment between sales and marketing, which is the drum that never stops getting beaten. But man, I mean, your marketing team's metrics need to be aligned really well.
Yeah.
Because even at Power Reviews, like my CEO was measuring marketing by number of leads. And I was just like, more leads, like I want better leads. Like, how do we measure that? Like, that's what I care about. And my CMO was freaking awesome. She was a rock star. And so she and I would just go arm in arm and yell at him, and we would win. You know, it's funny. You know, that article I wrote about the fact that if somebody comes to me with a prospecting request, I say no and refer.
Yes.
My biggest client today sends me an email saying, the team wants you back here as quickly as possible, but we need prospecting help. What do you do? and I was just like, I say no. Like, I mean, it's so funny. So like, it happened. My biggest client obviously doesn't read my posts and came to me for prospecting help today. And it's funny because I said no, and she was like, all right, can you tell us, like, what haven't we done yet, and how would you approach it? And I would be like, well, if you need pure prospecting, I'm going to refer that out. If you need, like, here's the way that I think about it, and I kind of bring them back to transparency.
Yeah.
And waiting to hear what they say. But that when you qualify out of stuff and try not to be all things to all people, it's amazing how magnetic you become.
All right. So Todd, this has been an amazing impromptu. I can't thank you enough for doing this. All spurred. LinkedIn doesn't work. Those LinkedIn posting don't work, but all spurred from an awesome LinkedIn post. So, hey everyone, reach out to Todd Caponi. Awesome book, The Transparency Sale. You need a sales kickoff. He's your guy. You need a good smile with a fancy beard. Check out the video. Reach out to him, Todd. Any parting thoughts?
Dude, it's been like since Friday. I have, you know, it's funny. In college, my nickname was Proceeding Hairline.
See that? There you go. The older we get, we have hair coming out wherever we don't want to.
That's right.
There's a great image. So, hey, get after it, everyone. Thanks, Todd. I really appreciate it. Be well.
That was fun. Thanks, buddy.